Hey guys, so I wanted to show you guys how to disassemble the Garrow Firearms Development 17 HMR bolt carrier group. And first we're going to start just by talking about the differences between a standard bolt carrier group for an AR and the Garrow Firearms bolt carrier group. So obviously this is a standard style bolt carrier group. You can see how it's got the locking lugs. It's got this cam right here, and that's how it locks into battery. Your gas key is locked in. Everything is fixed except for the lugs themselves, the actual bolt. So, and you can see the size of this. It's pretty good sized. Now, the Garrow Firearms Development 17 HMR bolt carrier group. It looks quite a bit different. It's quite a bit smaller when you put the two next to each other. It's very, very light. This is about 4 ounces. And you can see there's the front. And you can see there's no lugs, there's no nothing, there's just the extractors here. Now the really interesting part is if you look at the gas key, you see that there's no staked part here. There are a couple roll pins, but we'll get into that here shortly. But this whole piece actually slides. And the reason it does that is because you'll notice there's a hole here and a hole here. If I move that out of the way. These two balls correspond with these two holes, and they allow the bolt carrier group to lock into battery and create a delayed action, so that when the gas comes out of the gun, it pushes this key back before the entire bolt carrier group moves. That allows bolt action accuracy essentially out of a semi-auto firearm. Really cool design. It also bleeds off all the energy, and it allows for variances in rimfire ammunition. So very, very cool. Like I said, a standard bolt carrier group here. The way you would disassemble this would be to pull this cam pin and then essentially, pull this. Everything comes apart nice and easy. Not quite the same way with the Garrow Firearms Development bolt carrier group here. So we're going to get into disassembling this. So the first thing that you'll notice is, again, these two roll pins here, and you can't see them when you just kind of flip it over, but if you pull that gas key back, all of a sudden there they are. So that's how you're going to have to get to those roll pins, is to have it upside down, push the gas key back, and expose those. So I have a roll pin punch, and when I push it back, I've already grabbed the right size one. I'm going to just stick it down in there and pull that out of the way, because that's not going to provide enough resistance. Grab my little hammer over here, and we're just going to pop those pins out. So now we've got one roll pin that popped out, and the other one's almost there, as you can see. I'm just going to finish driving that one out now. And there we go. I'm going to put my roll pins there. Now that you've got those out, I'm holding on to the gas key where it is, and I'm going to pull my punch out, and I'm going to release it slowly. And now you can pull your firing pin, because those two roll pins actually hold into this flange, and that's what keeps the firing pin from coming out. So now we can pull the firing pin. And here comes the fun part. And then lift the front, and that spring came flying out of there. And there's the spring. And now you can remove the gas key itself. Okay, so since my cat knocked over everything and I had to find everything that I need, because she's ill and she has kittens that are running around everywhere and she's dead. Anyways, back to reassembling. So, again, this spring goes in this raceway. Your gas key will drop. Your front will drop into there. Your back just sits in. And this spring will go up against here. Hopefully you can see that. So we're going to start with your spring like this. Get those roll pins out of the way. Start with your spring like this, and I'm going to try and do this being able to rotate it once I get things lined up. Hopefully I can, so that you guys can actually see what I'm talking about, but that means I gotta hold it so it doesn't go flying, because it's kind of fun when it does. Luckily I have a bunch of extra springs. So we're gonna have it like this. I'm going to take the front wings and I'm going to put them up against the spring, and I'm actually going to move the spring a little bit. You can see the hole right here that the firing pin goes through. So you want the spring lined up with that hole, because the firing pin is going to go straight through the spring. So as I get it into that raceway on the bolt carrier group, I'm going to slightly adjust the spring so that it's centered over that hole. And that way, when we get everything dropped in, the firing pin, which goes through the back of the bolt carrier group here, will go through this piece. And then it'll slide all the way through the spring, up through the front of here and these wings, and then we're good to go. So, you got an idea of what we're trying to do here. Now, one thing before I get going is this spring, when you start to install it, will try to bend down like this. And what happens is when it bends down, it'll actually jam against the top of the gas key, and then you can't do anything. It'll never line up. So as you install it, you actually have to get it to where the spring bends this direction. And when it bends this direction, as you push the entire gas key in, it'll actually flatten out. So then the firing pin will slide all the way through it. If you do it this way, it'll jam up. You'll never get anything in. So again, the theory behind it, it can be a little bit tricky. So I'm lining up that spring with the hole in the front of the gas key as my spring goes flying. This is why it's so critical to get everything just right. Okay, so hopefully that stays put. You can see it's jammed up against the gas key, and it looks like it's all gonna screw up, but I guarantee it's not when you start pushing everything in. So I'm gonna push down with the front, and you'll actually see the spring start to flatten out. And so I've got the front wings in, and you can see that spring, hopefully you can see, it's still a little arched, but it's definitely coming back into a flat plane. I push down the back, and voila. I can let go, and that spring is pushing straight forward. It's not trying to push the gas key up and away. And I can do this, and everything functions perfectly fine. So the final test is if you can take your firing pin and slide it through without any binding at all. So I'm holding this just in case it wants to try and fall out with that spring. And I'm going to drop my firing pin in. and as you can see, it's sliding all the way in, which means there's no issues with our spring whatsoever. So again, we'll test. No binding, no issues. So that's that part of it. The very last part is going to be reinstalling these roll pins, which are right here. I won't go through that part because that takes some time, and hopefully you guys know what you're doing for installing roll pins, but roll pin punch makes a huge difference. And once you get, just make sure that before you put those roll pins in and secured, that your firing pin is all the way forward. I have had people contact me and say, nothing's working right. Well, it's because they installed their firing pin like this, and that those roll pins drop in on the sides of this wing right here, and if that wing isn't far enough forward, your firing pin is free floating, and it's not even far enough in to do anything, not hit the ammo or whatever. So make sure that your firing pin is all the way forward before you install those roll pins.